Welcome back to Lumio's Tower, where we're aiming to be the very best like no one ever was. And today, we're going to be talking about this whole Pokemon Home stuff, and just specifically how it's handling, or how it's affecting, rather, the competitive bracket. You know, I've already covered my thoughts on it. I've covered that on my own channel. We actually have recorded our thoughts on it on Hidden Power. So, you know, if you're following me on LumiosePost or on the Hidden Power podcast, you know, you can see my thoughts there on just the idea of it happening in general. But today we are honing in on what this means for competitive, and it does mean a lot for competitive, not just the delay, but also the announcement. Now, when I say delay, really I should say mistake, because that is the official word, right? They're saying that they made a mistake and that they pushed the games back, and or the update back. They didn't even say they pushed it back. They said they were wrong about the date, and it won't be the date they said. So it feels like a pushback, but it isn't. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, like, why do we care about Pokemon Home? And I think the biggest people that care about Pokemon Home, not the only people, but the biggest people that care about Pokemon Home are the competitive players. And the reason why is that we get access to our older Pokemon that we've already trained. I have talked to many people who are kind of like, yeah, I've been, you know, training up some Paldea Pokemon, but, like, I don't care to train up, you know, old Pokemon that I already have, because, like, what's the point in EV training a Scizor and IV training a Scizor when I have my perfect Scizor that I've been using since Generation 4, and I can just get him when Pokemon Home comes out? And it's, I mean, it's a super valid point, right? But then you also do have, especially this time around, you have the Hisui Pokemon, and the Hisui Pokemon, while they have been Pokemon for over a year, you know, we've known about them for over a year, they are indeed a big deal. You know, they haven't been seen in a player versus player game yet. Legends Arceus did not have player versus player, so this is the first time that they will be allowed in competitive, you know. Now, they currently won't be allowed in VGC. People are kind of thinking that it'll be July when they're allowed in VGC, but they will be allowed, you know, when just casual battles, like the battles that I do on this channel. I've used Greninja. It's not allowed in competitive, you know, or in VGC. So, you know what I mean. And eventually that will spread to competitive too, or VGC. But yeah, these are a big deal because a lot of these Pokemon show a lot of promise too. You have just off the top of my head, Hisuian Arcanine is, it's got Rock Head, and it gets access to Head Smash and Flare Blitz, you know, two moves that get stabbed from, and it won't take any recoil damage from them, and they are very powerful moves. That's a huge deal. Hisuian Samurai and Cleavor both get access to Sharpness, which will boost their signature moves, as well as their signature moves doing damage and setting up hazards. So Cleavor's signature move does damage, and then it also sets up Stealth Rocks, and Samurot's signature move does damage, and it also sets up spikes. So huge deal. There's other ones too. I've done a whole video on the Pokemon that are like kind of have the most competitive promise. You can totally check that out, but talking about like when home releases. But yeah, this is just a quick refresher on that, and that's why it's a big deal to competitive players, is because, you know, that's going to be something that does a lot for the game. And also, just as a Pokemon fan, right, you want to be able to use new Pokemon. You know, Hisuian Samurai, I've had to look at it for a year. It is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I haven't been able to use it in battle against somebody. That kills me, you know? But then you also do have the fact that just getting access to new mons, even just a handful of new mons like Home will give us access to, really shakes up competitive, both VGC and singles, because it completely changes the game. You now have, especially this time around, Landorus Therian gets to come back. Well, Landorus Therian, if you know anything about VGC, you know that he is incredible. He, has access to Intimidate, and then he's a great pivoter, and then he's just a very strong attacker. He gets so many different moves. He doesn't get knockoff this time around, so I don't think he will be quite as good as he used to be, but he's still Lander Astharian, so he's still going to be a big deal, especially because he can, lower the attack of a lot of strong physical attackers we have in this game, like Palafin and Iron Hand. Gyarados has been run a lot recently, but more as a support mon, but etc, etc. Again, that's just off the top of my head. But yeah, then you do also have just the fact that, as a non-competitive fan, as just a Pokemon fan, you are excited to get a little refresher in the game. I'm excited to see the textures on some of my favorite Pokemon. I'm excited to see Cantoni and Tauros back. I'm excited to see Hisui and Samurai back. So many others. But yeah, and I guess a good question of the day would be, what Pokemon are you most excited to see come back from Pokemon Home? I've already asked that question once on a battle video, but that's okay. Some of y'all don't watch those and just watch these, and that's perfectly fine. But I wanted to ask you both places and just really get all of y'all's thoughts on who you're most excited to have come back from Home. Now, let's talk about what Home's update is going to do for the game. Well, first off, Home is going to have a new feature that is a move tailor, like a move relearner. So, the way this is going to work is, let's say I have a Heracross that I caught in Sword and Shield, and I traded up to Scarlet and Violet. Well, this Heracross's moves will reset. Let's say that Heracross is level 63, and I bring it into Scarlet and Violet. Its moves will now reset to be basically what a Heracross that's level 63, its natural moveset would be in Scarlet and Violet. Well, there is a move relearner in Home that can help you relearn moves from past games. Now, what I'm curious is, if this will work when you transfer them into Scarlet and Violet, like if you'll be able to have them learn moves, because a lot of Pokemon lost some moves that were a huge deal. Like Scald has been locked to Volcanion only, and that was a huge move on water types. You have a big one for me is Grassy Glide on Rillaboom. That has been taken away as well, and that was huge because that gave a strong priority move to Rillaboom, who sets up his own grassy terrain, so it gets the priority from Grassy Glide, but that was taken away. So I'm wondering if they'll allow us to get access to like that, for example. I don't really fully understand the details of the, they're pretty vague on what exactly this does, but it'll be interesting to see, what we get from this. Now, on that note, I do think we need to talk about the backwards compatibility of it all. That's where this is coming from. So what backwards compatibility means in this case is, if I catch a Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet and it is compatible with Sword and Shield, Legends Arceus, or Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I can send them to those games despite it having been caught in Scarlet and Violet. In the past, you could only trade up, except back in Gen 2, you could trade between Gen 2 and Gen 1. But, we're not in the past, we're in the present. It has been ever since Gen 3, or Gen 4 really, because Gen 3 couldn't even connect to Gen 2. It has been you trade your Pokemon up. You cannot get Pokemon from a newer game. But that's no longer the case. Now, again, the Pokemon does have to be compatible. So, like, Orthworm is a brand new Pokemon. I cannot send Orthworm to Sword and Shield. Muck is a Pokemon that's been around for a long time, but is not in Sword and Shield. So, I cannot send a Muck to Sword and Shield. However, Pikachu, that's a Pokemon that's been in all 4 previously mentioned games. I can catch a Pikachu in Scarlet and Violet. I can evolve it into Raichu. I can EV train it, IV train it, give it its nature that I want, all that fun stuff. And then I can send it to, even though it's caught Scarlet Violet, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Legends Arceus, or even in Sword and Shield. Now, the thing that's really big about this is it means that we can EV train in Sword and Shield, which is huge, because Sword and Shield's EV training and IV training was a lot better than Scarlet and Violet's. It was just one a little bit easier to get access to, I wouldn't say IV training, but the EVs, because in the Isle of Armor, there is a vending machine that you can use that will allow you to get the vitamin items for pretty much half the price, which is huge because in this game, you know, we're paying full price for it. Now, I imagine when DLC comes out for Scarlet and Violet, this will all change and it will get access to some things that make getting competitive mons a little bit easier. But until then, you know, this is what we're stuck with. We're stuck with needing to get the vitamins the full way, or EV training, like the natural way, battling wild Pokemon, which is what I've been doing, because that's better than blowing my money on the vitamins. But this is really nice, because it means if I happen to, for example, this Hippowdon with the Terra Fairy typing, I can catch this Hippowdon, and instead of having to worry about bringing in a Hippowdon that I've already got EV trained, but I'm going to need to change its Terra type, let's say I don't have the Terra Shards to change its Terra type to a Fairy type, well, then I can take this Hippowdon that, you know, I'm hoping to catch, and send it back to Sword and Shield, EV train it, IV train it, give it its nature, whatever I want to do with it, and then send it back to Scarlet and Violet, where it will have its Terra Fairy typing still, but will now be IV trained, EV trained, or specifically EV trained for half the price, which is absolutely gigantic. But yeah, this is a big deal, and it's going to be interesting to see how this will play a role going forward. I am curious if the DLC will kind of make sending your Pokemon back to EV train them obsolete, or if, you know, it'll add a feature of its own that makes it easy. I imagine it will. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Again, also let me know what Pokemon you are most excited to see be brought back into Scarlet and Violet from home. You know, it can be a new Pokemon like Hisuian Samurai, a Pokemon you haven't been able to use before. Or it can even just be, hey, I know Scizzor's in the game, but I've had this shiny Scizzor since Gen 3, and that's the one I'm most excited to be back. That's totally valid, man. I've got Pokemon like that too. For me, it's Hisuian Samurai, though. I'm super excited to get what is one of my favorite Pokemon, top 6 easily favorite Pokemon, back and be able to actually use it in competitive now. Yeah, be sure to comment all that, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss our future discussions, our battles, all kinds of fun stuff we do on here. And until next time, keep on climbing to the top.